Presbyterianism is a branch of Reformed Protestantism which traces its origins to the British Isles. Presbyterian churches derive their name from the Presbyterian form of church government, which is government by representative assemblies of elders. Many Reformed churches are organized this way, but the word Presbyterian, when capitalized, is often applied uniquely to the churches that trace their roots to the Scottish and English churches that bore that name and English political groups that formed during the English Civil War. Presbyterian theology typically emphasizes the sovereignty of God, the authority of the Scriptures, and the necessity of grace through faith in Christ. Presbyterian church government was ensured in Scotland by the Acts of Union in 1707 which created the Kingdom of Great Britain. In fact, most Presbyterians found in England can trace a Scottish connection, and the Presbyterian denomination was also taken to North America mostly by Scots and Scots-Irish immigrants. The Presbyterian denominations in Scotland hold to the theology of John Calvin and his immediate successors, although there is a range of theological views within contemporary Presbyterianism. Local congregations of churches which use Presbyterian polity are governed by sessions made up of representatives of the congregation. A conciliar approach which is found at other levels of decision-making. The roots of Presbyterianism lie in the European Reformation of the 16th century, with the example of John Calvin's Geneva being particularly influential. Most Reformed churches who trace their history back to Scotland are either Presbyterian or Congregationalist in government. In the 20th century, some Presbyterians played an important role in the ecumenical movement, including the World Council of Churches. Many Presbyterian denominations have found ways of working together with other Reformed denominations and Christians of other traditions, especially in the World Communion of Reformed Churches. Some Presbyterian churches have entered into unions with other churches, such as Congregationalists, Lutherans, Anglicans, and Methodists. History. Presbyterian history is part of the history of Christianity, but the beginning of Presbyterianism as a distinct movement occurred during the 16th century Protestant Reformation. As the Catholic Church resisted the Reformers, the Church split and different theological movements bore different denominations. Presbyterianism was especially influenced by the French theologian John Calvin, who is credited with the development of Reformed theology, and the work of John Knox, a Scotsman who studied with Calvin in Geneva, Switzerland and brought his teachings back to Scotland. The Presbyterian Church traces its ancestry back primarily to England and Scotland. In August 1560 the Parliament of Scotland adopted the Scots Confession as the creed of the Scottish Kingdom. In December 1560, the first Book of Discipline was published, outlining important doctrinal issues but also establishing regulations for church government, including the creation of 10 ecclesiastical districts with appointed superintendents which later became known as presbyteries. In time, the Scots Confession would be supplanted by the Westminster Confession of Faith, and the larger and shorter catechisms, which were formulated by the Westminster Assembly between 1643 and 1649. Characteristics: Presbyterians distinguished themselves from other denominations by doctrine, institutional organization and worship, often using a book of order to regulate common practice in order. The origins of the Presbyterian churches were in Calvinism. Many branches of Presbyterianism are remnants of previous splits from larger groups. Some of the splits have been due to doctrinal controversy, while some have been caused by disagreement concerning the degree to which those ordained to church office should be required to agree with the Westminster Confession of Faith, which historically serves as an important confessional document, second only to the Bible, yet directing particularities in the standardization and translation of the Bible. In Presbyterian churches, Presbyterians place great importance upon education and lifelong learning. Continuous study of the Scriptures, theological writings, and understanding and interpretation of church doctrine are embodied in several statements of faith and catechisms formally adopted by various branches of the Church, often referred to as subordinate standards. It is generally considered that the point of such learning is to enable one to put one's faith into practice. Some Presbyterians generally exhibit their faith in action as well as words, by generosity, hospitality, and the constant pursuit of social justice and reform, as well as proclaiming the gospel of Christ. Governance. Presbyterian government is by councils of elders. Teaching and ruling elders are ordained and convene in the lowest council known as a session or consistory responsible for the discipline, nurture, and mission of the local congregation. Teaching elders have responsibility for teaching, worship, and performing sacraments. Pastors are called by individual congregations. A congregation issues a call for the pastor's service, but this call must be ratified by the local presbytery. Ruling elders are usually laymen who are elected by the congregation and ordained to serve with the teaching elders, assuming responsibility for nurture and leadership of the congregation. Often, especially in larger congregations, the elders delegate the practicalities of buildings, finance, and temporal ministry to the needy in the congregation to a distinct group of officers. This group may variously be known as a deacon board, board of deacons diaconate, or deacon's court. These are sometimes known as presbyters to the full congregation. Above the sessions exist presbyteries, which have area responsibilities. These are composed of teaching elders and ruling elders from each of the constituent congregations. The presbytery sends representatives to a broader regional or national assembly, generally known as the General Assembly, although an intermediate level of a synod sometimes exists. This congregation/presbytery/synod/General Assembly schema is based on the historical structure of the larger Presbyterian churches, such as the Church of Scotland or the Presbyterian Church. Some bodies, such as the Presbyterian Church in America and the Presbyterian Church in Ireland, skip one of the steps between congregation and General Assembly, and usually the step skipped is the synod. The Church of Scotland has now abolished the synod. Presbyterian governance is practiced by Presbyterian denominations and also by many other Reformed churches. Doctrine. Presbyterianism is historically a confessional tradition. This has two implications. The obvious one is that confessional churches express their faith in the form of confessions of faith, which have some level of authoritative status. However, this is based on a more subtle point. In confessional churches, theology is not solely an individual matter. While individuals are encouraged to understand Scripture, and may challenge the current institutional understanding, theology is carried out by the community as a whole. It is this community understanding of theology that is expressed in confessions. However, there has arisen a spectrum of approaches to confessionalism. The manner of subscription, or the degree to which the official standards establish the actual doctrine of the Church, turns out to be a practical matter. That is, the decisions rendered in ordination and in the courts of the Church largely determine what the Church means, representing the whole, by its adherence to the doctrinal standard. Some Presbyterian traditions adopt only the Westminster Confession of Faith as the doctrinal standard to which teaching elders are required to subscribe, in contrast to the larger and shorter catechisms, which are approved for use in instruction. Many Presbyterian denominations, especially in North America, have adopted all of the Westminster standards as their standard of doctrine, which is subordinate to the Bible. These documents are Calvinistic in their doctrinal orientation. The Presbyterian Church in Canada retains the Westminster Confession of Faith in its original form, while admitting the historical period in which it was written should be understood when it is read. The Westminster Confession is the principal subordinate standard of the Church of Scotland, but with due regard to liberty of opinion in points which do not enter into the substance of the faith. This formulation represents many years of struggle over the extent to which the confession reflects the Word of God and the struggle of conscience of those who came to believe it did not fully do so. Some Presbyterian churches, such as the Free Church of Scotland, have no such conscience clause. The Presbyterian Church has adopted the Book of Confessions, which reflects the inclusion of other Reformed confessions in addition to the Westminster Standards. These other documents include ancient creedal statements, 16th-century Reformed confessions, and 20th-century documents. The Presbyterian Church in Canada developed the confessional document Living Faith and retains it as a subordinate standard of the denomination. It is confessional in format, yet like the Westminster Confession, draws attention back to original Bible text. Presbyterians in Ireland who rejected Calvinism and the Westminster Confessions formed the non-subscribing Presbyterian Church of Ireland. Worship and sacraments, worship. Presbyterian denominations that trace their heritage to the British Isles usually organise their church services inspired by the principles in the Directory of Public Worship, developed by the Westminster Assembly in the 1640s. This directory documented Reformed worship practices and theology adopted and developed over the preceding century by British Puritans, initially guided by John Calvin and John Knox. It was enacted as law by the Scottish Parliament, and became one of the foundational documents of Presbyterian church legislation elsewhere. Historically, the driving principle in the development of the standards of Presbyterian worship is the regulative principle of worship, which specifies that, what is not commanded is forbidden. Over subsequent centuries, many Presbyterian churches modified these prescriptions by introducing hymnody, instrumental accompaniment and ceremonial vestments in worship. However, there is not one fixed Presbyterian worship style. Although there are set services for the Lord's Day, one can find a service to be evangelical and even revivalist in tone, or strongly liturgical, approximating the practices of Lutheranism or Anglicanism, or semi-formal, allowing for a balance of hymns, preaching, and congregational participation. Most Presbyterian churches follow the traditional liturgical year and observe the traditional holidays, holy seasons, such as Advent, Christmas, Ash Wednesday, Holy Week, Easter, Pentecost, etc. They also make use of the appropriate seasonal liturgical colors, etc. Many incorporate ancient liturgical prayers and responses into the communion services and follow a daily, seasonal, and festival lectionary. Other Presbyterians, however, such as the Reformed Presbyterians, would practice a cappella-exclusive psalmody, as well as eschew the celebration of holy days. Among the Paleo-Orthodox and emerging church movements in Protestant and evangelical churches, in which some Presbyterians are involved, clergy are moving away from the traditional black Geneva gown to such vestments as the alb and chasuble, but also cassock and surplice, which some, particularly those identifying with the liturgical renewal movement, hold to be more ancient and representative of a more ecumenical past. Sacraments. Presbyterians traditionally have held the worship position that there are only two sacraments, baptism, in which they would baptize infants, as well as unbaptized adults by the aspersion or effusion method, rather than the immersion method. The Lord's Supper, in which they would believe that Christ is present in the bread and wine through the Holy Spirit, as opposed to being locally present. Unlike many denominations that baptize infants on the basis of baptismal regeneration, Presbyterians, along with their continental Reformed counterparts, baptize infants on the belief that as Hebrew infants were circumcised in order to show that they were part of the covenant community, infants of believing parents are likewise to be baptized. Architecture. Early Presbyterians were careful to distinguish between the church, which referred the members, and the meeting house, which was the building in which the church met. Until the late 19th century, very few Presbyterians ever referred to their buildings as churches. Presbyterians believed the meeting houses are buildings to support the worship of God. The decor in some instances was austere so as not to detract from worship. Early Presbyterian meeting houses were extremely plain. No stained glass, no elaborate furnishings, and no images were to be found in the meeting house. The pulpit, often raised so as only to be accessible by a staircase, was the centerpiece of the building. In the late 19th century a gradual shift began to occur. Prosperous congregations built imposing churches, such as Fourth Presbyterian in Chicago, Madison Avenue Presbyterian and Fifth Avenue Presbyterian in New York City, Shadyside Presbyterian Church in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, East Liberty Presbyterian Church in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, First Presbyterian in Dallas, House of Hope Presbyterian Church in St. Paul, Minnesota and many others. Usually a Presbyterian church will not have statues of saints, nor the ornate altar more typical of a Roman Catholic church. Instead, one will find a communion table, usually on the same level as the congregation. There may be a rail between the communion table and a chancel behind it, which may contain a more decorative altar-type table, choir loft, or choir stalls, lectern and clergy area. The altar is called the communion table and the altar area is called the chancel by Presbyterians. This is related to the doctrinal stance they take regarding communion, in which they reject what they believe to be the Roman Catholic and Episcopal belief that Jesus is re-sacrificed during each Mass. This is not the Catholic understanding. In a Presbyterian, one will not usually find a crucifix hanging behind the chancel. Instead, there will be an altar cross either on the communion table or on a table in the chancel. By using the empty cross, or cross of the resurrection, Presbyterians emphasize the resurrection and that Christ is not continually dying, but died once and is alive for all eternity. However, one may find stained glass windows that depict the life of Christ and the crucifixion, behind a chancel. Presbyterian church buildings are often decorated with a cross that has a circle around the center, or Celtic cross. This not only emphasized the resurrection, but also acknowledges historical aspects of Presbyterianism. The baptismal font will be located either at the entrance or near the chancel area. Presbyterian architecture generally makes significant use of symbolism. Regions: France, there is a Church of Scotland in central Paris, the Scots Kirk, Paris, which is English-speaking, and is attended by many nationalities. It maintains close links with the Church of Scotland in Scotland itself, as well as with the Reformed Church of France. Scotland: John Knox, a Scot who had spent time studying under Calvin in Geneva, returned to Scotland and urged his countrymen to reform the Church in line with Calvinist doctrines. After a period of religious convulsion and political conflict culminating in a victory for the Protestant party at the Siege of Leith, the authority of the Church of Rome was abolished in favour of Reformation by the legislation of the Scottish Reformation Parliament in 1560. The Church was eventually organised by Andrew Melville along Presbyterian lines to become the National Church of Scotland. King James VI and I moved the Church of Scotland towards an episcopal form of government, and in 1637, James' successor, Charles Ian William Laud, the Archbishop of Canterbury, attempted to force the Church of Scotland to use the Book of Common Prayer. What resulted was an armed insurrection, with many Scots signing the Solemn League and Covenant. The Covenanters would serve as the government of Scotland for nearly a decade, and would also send military support to the parliamentarians during the English Civil War. Following the restoration of the monarchy in 1660, Charles II, despite the initial support that he received from the Covenanters, reinstated an episcopal form of government on the Church. However, with the Glorious Revolution of 1688, the Church of Scotland was finally unequivocally recognised as a Presbyterian institution by the monarch due to Scottish Presbyterian support for the aforementioned revolution, and the Acts of Union 1707 between Scotland and England guaranteed the Church of Scotland's form of government. However, legislation by the United Kingdom Parliament allowing patronage led to splits in the Church. In 1733, a group of ministers seceded from the Church of Scotland to form the Associate Presbytery, another group seceded in 1761 to form the Relief Church, and the disruption of 1843 led to the formation of the Free Church of Scotland. Further splits took place, especially over theological issues, but most Presbyterians in Scotland were reunited by 1929 union of the established Church of Scotland and the United Free Church of Scotland. The Presbyterian denominations in Scotland today are the Church of Scotland, the Free Church of Scotland, the United Free Church of Scotland, the Free Church of Scotland, the Free Presbyterian Church of Scotland, the Associated Presbyterian Church, and the Reformed Presbyterian Church of Scotland. Within Scotland, the term kirk is usually used to refer to a local Presbyterian church. Informally, the term the kirk refers to the Church of Scotland. England. In England, Presbyterianism was established in secret in 1592. Thomas Cartwright is thought to be the first Presbyterian in England. Cartwright's controversial lectures at Cambridge University condemning the episcopal hierarchy of the Elizabethan Church led to his deprivation of his post by Archbishop John Whitehead and his emigration abroad. In 1647, by an act of the Long Parliament under the control of Puritans, the Church of England permitted Presbyterianism. The re-establishment of the monarchy in 1660 brought the return of episcopal church government in England. but the Presbyterian Church in England continued in nonconformity, outside of the established church. In 1719 a major split, the Salters Hall controversy, occurred, with the majority siding with non-Trinitarian views. Thomas Bradbury published several sermons bearing on the controversy, and in 1719, an answer to the reproaches cast on the dissenting ministers who subscribed their belief of the eternal Trinity. By the 18th century many English Presbyterian congregations had become Unitarian in doctrine. A number of new Presbyterian churches were founded by Scottish immigrants to England in the 19th century and later. Following the disruption in 1843 many of those linked to the Church of Scotland eventually joined what became the Presbyterian Church of England in 1876. Some, that is Crown Court, St Andrews and Swallow Street, did not join the English denomination, which is why there are Church of Scotland congregations in England such as those at Crown Court, and St Columba's, Pont Street in London. There is also a congregation in the heart of London's financial district called London City Presbyterian Church that is also affiliated with Free Church of Scotland. In 1972, the Presbyterian Church of England united with the Congregational Church in England and Wales to form the United Reformed Church. Among the congregations the PCOFE brought to the URC were Tunley, Aston Tyrol and John Knox Presbyterian Church, Stepney, London. These are among the sole survivors today of the English Presbyterian churches of the 17th century. The URC also has a presence in Scotland, mostly of former Congregationalist churches. Two former Presbyterian congregations, St Columba's, Cambridge, and St Columba's, Oxford, continue as congregations of the URC and university chaplaincies of the Church of Scotland. In recent years a number of smaller denominations adopting Presbyterian forms of church government have organised in England, including the International Presbyterian Church planted by evangelical theologian Francis Schaeffer of L'Abri Fellowship in the 1970s, and the Evangelical Presbyterian Church in England and Wales founded in the north of England in the late 1980s. Wales. In Wales, Presbyterianism is represented by the Presbyterian Church of Wales, which was originally composed largely of Calvinistic Methodists who accepted Calvinist theology rather than the Arminianism of the Wesleyan Methodists. They broke off from the Church of England in 1811, ordaining their own ministers. They were originally known as the Calvinist Methodist Connection and in the 1920s it became alternatively known as the Presbyterian Church of Wales. Ireland. Presbyterianism is the largest Protestant denomination in Northern Ireland and the second largest on the island of Ireland, and was brought by Scottish plantation settlers to Ulster who had been strongly encouraged to emigrate by James VI of Scotland, later James I of England. An estimated 100,000 Scottish Presbyterians moved to the northern counties of Ireland between 1607 and the Battle of the Boyne in 1690. The Presbytery of Ulster was formed in 1642 separately from the established Anglican Church. Presbyterians, along with Roman Catholics in Ulster and the rest of Ireland, suffered under the discriminatory penal laws until they were revoked in the early 19th century. Presbyterianism is represented in Ireland by the Presbyterian Church in Ireland, the Free Presbyterian Church of Ulster, the non-subscribing Presbyterian Church of Ireland, the Reformed Presbyterian Church of Ireland and the Evangelical Presbyterian Church. Italy. Further information, Waldensian. The Waldensian Evangelical Church is an Italian Protestant denomination. The church was founded in the 12th century, and centuries later, after the Protestant Reformation, it adhered to Calvinist theology and became the Italian branch of the Presbyterian churches. As such, the church is a member of the World Communion of Reformed Churches. North America. Even before Presbyterianism spread with immigrants abroad from Scotland, there were divisions in the larger Presbyterian family. Some later rejoined only to separate again. In what some interpret as rueful self-reproach, some Presbyterians refer to the divided Presbyterian churches as the split peas. United States. Presbyterianism first officially arrived in colonial America in 1703 with the establishment of the First Presbytery in Philadelphia. In time, the presbytery would be joined by two more to form a synod and would eventually evolve into the Presbyterian Church in the United States of America in 1789. The nation's largest Presbyterian denomination, the Presbyterian Church PC can trace their heritage back to the original PCUSA, as can the Presbyterian Church in America, the Orthodox Presbyterian Church, the Bible Presbyterian Church, the Cumberland Presbyterian Church, the Cumberland Presbyterian Church in America, the Evangelical Presbyterian Church and the Evangelical Covenant Order of Presbyterians. Other Presbyterian bodies in the United States include the Reformed Presbyterian Church of North America, the Associate Reformed Presbyterian Church, the Reformed Presbyterian Church in the United States, the Reformed Presbyterian Church General Assembly, the Reformed Presbyterian Church Hanover Presbytery, the Covenant Presbyterian Church, the Presbyterian Reformed Church, the Westminster Presbyterian Church in the United States, the Korean American Presbyterian Church, and the Free Presbyterian Church of North America. The territory within about a 50-mile radius of Charlotte, North Carolina, is historically the greatest concentration of Presbyterianism in the southern United States, while an almost identical geographic area around Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, contains probably the largest number of Presbyterians in the entire nation. The PC, beginning with its predecessor bodies, has, in common with other so-called mainline Protestant denominations, experienced a significant decline in members in recent years. Some estimates have placed that loss at nearly half in the last 40 years. Presbyterian influence, especially through Princeton theology, can be traced to modern evangelicalism. Barmer says that evangelicalism itself, I believe, is quintessentially North American phenomenon, deriving as it did from the confluence of Pietism, Presbyterianism, and the vestiges of Puritanism. Evangelicalism picked up the peculiar characteristics from each strain: a warm-hearted spirituality from the Pietists, doctrinal precisionism from the Presbyterians, and individualistic introspection from the Puritans. Even as the North American context itself has profoundly shaped the various manifestations of evangelicalism, fundamentalism, neo-evangelicalism, the holiness movement, Pentecostalism, the charismatic movement, and various forms of African American and Hispanic evangelicalism. In the late 1800s, Presbyterian missionaries established a presence in what is now northern New Mexico. This provided an alternative to the medieval Catholicism, which was brought to the area by the Spanish conquistadors and had remained unchanged. The area experienced a mini-reformation, in that many converts were made to Presbyterianism, prompting persecution. In some cases, the converts left towns and villages to establish their own neighboring villages. The arrival of the United States to the area prompted the Catholic Church to modernize and make efforts at winning the converts back, many of which did return. However, there are still stalwart Presbyterians and Presbyterian churches in the area. Canada. In Canada, the largest Presbyterian denomination and indeed the largest Protestant denomination was the Presbyterian Church in Canada, formed in 1875 with the merger of four regional groups. In 1925, the United Church of Canada was formed by the majority of Presbyterians combining with the Methodist Church, Canada, and the Congregational Union of Canada. A sizable minority of Canadian Presbyterians, primarily in southern Ontario but also throughout the entire nation, withdrew, and reconstituted themselves as a non-concurring continuing Presbyterian body. They regained use of the original name in 1939. Latin America. Presbyterianism arrived in Latin America in the 19th century. Mexico. The biggest Presbyterian church is the National Presbyterian Church in Mexico, which has around 2,500,000 members and associates and 3,000 congregations, but there are other small denominations like the Associate Reformed Presbyterian Church in Mexico, which was founded in 1875 by the Associate Reformed Church in North America. The Independent Presbyterian Church and the Presbyterian Reformed Church in Mexico, the National Conservative Presbyterian Church in Mexico are existing churches in the Reformed tradition. Brazil. In Brazil, the Presbyterian Church of Brazil totals approximately 788,553 members. Other Presbyterian churches in this nation have around 350,000 members. The renewed Presbyterian Church in Brazil was influenced by the Charismatic movement and has about 131,000 members as of 2011. The Conservative Presbyterian Church was founded in 1940 and has 8 presbyteries. The Fundamentalist Presbyterian Church in Brazil was influenced by Karl McIntosh and the Bible Presbyterian Church USA and has around 1,800 members. The Independent Presbyterian Church in Brazil was founded in 1903 by Pastor Pereira, has 500 congregations and 75,000 members. The United Presbyterian Church in Brazil has around 4,000 members. There are also ethnic Korean Presbyterian churches in the country. The Evangelical Reformed Church in Brazil has Dutch origin. The Reformed churches in Brazil were recently founded by the Canadian Reformed churches with the Reformed Church in the Netherlands. Congregational churches present in the country are also part of the Calvinistic tradition in Latin America. Other Latin American states, there are probably more than 4 million members of Presbyterian churches in all of Latin America. Presbyterian churches are also present in Peru, Bolivia, Cuba, Trinidad and Tobago, Venezuela, Colombia, Chile, Paraguay, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Argentina and others, but with few members. The Presbyterian Church in Belize has 14 churches and church plants and there is a Reformed seminary founded in 2004. Some Latin Americans in North America are active in the Presbyterian Sirzillo movement. Africa. Presbyterianism arrived in Africa in the 19th century through the work of Scottish missionaries and founded churches such as St. Michael and All Angels Church, Blantyre, Malawi. The church has grown extensively and now has a presence in at least 23 countries in the region. African Presbyterian churches often incorporate diaconal ministries, including social services, emergency relief, and the operation of mission hospitals. A number of partnerships exist between presbyteries in Africa and the PC, USA, including specific connections with Lesotho, Malawi, South Africa, Ghana and Zambia. For example, the Lackawanna Presbytery, located in northeastern Pennsylvania, has a partnership with a presbytery in Ghana. Also the Southminster Presbyterian Church, located near Pittsburgh, has partnerships with churches in Malawi and Kenya. The Presbyterian Church of Nigeria, Western Africa is also healthy and strong in mostly the southern states of this nation, strong density in the southeastern states of this country. Beginning from Cross River State, the nearby coastal states, Rivers State, Lagos State to Ebonyi and Abia states. The missionary expedition of Mary Slessor and Hope Waddell and their group in the mid-18th century in this coastal regions of the 10 British colony has brought about the beginning and the flourishing of this church in these areas. Kenya, the Presbyterian Church of East Africa, based in Kenya, is particularly strong, with 500 clergy and 4 million members. Malawi, the Reformed Presbyterian Church in Malawi has 150 congregations and 17,000 members. It was a mission of the Free Presbyterian Church of Scotland. The Restored Reformed Church works with RPCM. Evangelical Presbyterian Church in Malawi is an existing small church. Southern Africa is a major base of Reformed and Presbyterian churches. Northern Africa, in addition also there are a number of Presbyterian churches in North Africa, the most known is the Nile Synod in Egypt and a recently founded synod for Sudan. Asia, South Korea, Presbyterian churches are the biggest and by far the most influential Protestant denominations in South Korea, with close to 20,000 churches affiliated with the 2 largest Presbyterian denominations in the country. In South Korea there are 15 million Protestants and about 9,000,000 Presbyterians. In South Korea there are 100 different Presbyterian denominations. Most of the Korean Presbyterian denominations share the same name in Korean, Eo-Euro-I-O-A-E-Micron-I-Lambda-Osu, tracing its roots to the United Presbyterian Assembly before its long history of disputes and schisms. The Presbyterian schism began with the controversy in relation to the Japanese shrine worship enforced during the Japanese colonial period and the establishment of a minor division in 1952. And in 1953 the second schism happened when the theological orientation of the Cosan Seminary, later Hanshin University, founded in 1947 could not be tolerated in the PCK, and another minor group, the Presbyterian Church in the Republic of Korea, Kijang, E-In was separated. The last major schism had to do with the issue of whether the PCK should join the WCC. The controversy divided the PCK into two denominations, the Presbyterian Church of Korea, Tongup, I-Micron I-Copyright, and the General Assembly of Presbyterian Church in Korea, Hapdong, I-5 unregistered trademark in 1959. All major seminaries associated with each denomination claim heritage from the Pyongyang Theological Seminary, therefore, not only Presbyterian College and Theological Seminary and Chongsan University, which are related to PCK, but also Hanshin University of PROK, all celebrated the 100th class in 2007, 100 years from the first graduates of Pyongyang Theological Seminary. Korean Presbyterian denominations are active in evangelism, and many of its missionaries are being sent overseas, being the second biggest missionary sender in the world after the United States. GSM, the missionary body of the Hapdong General Assembly of Presbyterian Churches of Korea, is the single largest Presbyterian missionary organization in the Korea. In addition, there are many Korean American Presbyterians in the United States, either with their own church sites or sharing space in pre-existing churches, as is the case in Australia, New Zealand, and even Muslim countries such as Saudi Arabia with Korean immigration. Taiwan. The Presbyterian Church in Taiwan is by far the largest Protestant denomination in Taiwan, with some 238,372 members as of 2009. English Presbyterian missionary James Laidlaw Maxwell established the first Presbyterian church in Tainan in 1865. His colleague George Leslie Mackay, of the Canadian Presbyterian Mission, was active in Danshui in North Taiwan from 1872 to 1901. He founded the island's first university and hospital, and created a written script for Taiwanese Minnan. The English and Canadian missions joined together as the PCT in 1912. One of the few churches permitted to operate in Taiwan through the era of Japanese rule, the PCT experienced rapid growth during the era of Kuomintang-imposed martial law, in part due to its support for democracy, human rights, and Taiwan independence. Former ROC President Lee Teng-hui is a Presbyterian. India. In the mainly Christian Indian state of Mizoram, the Presbyterian denomination is the largest denomination. It was brought to the region with missionaries from Wales in 1894. Prior to Mizoram, the Welsh Presbyterians started venturing into the northeast of India through the Khasi Hills and established Presbyterian churches all over the Khasi Hills from the 1840s onwards. Hence there is a strong presence of Presbyterians in Shillong and the areas adjoining it. The Welsh missionaries built their first church in Cherrapunji in 1846. Presbyterians participated in the mergers that resulted in the Church of North India and the Church of South India. Oceania, Australia. In Australia, Presbyterianism is the fourth largest denomination of Christianity, with nearly 600,000 Australians claiming to be Presbyterian in the 2006 Commonwealth Census. Presbyterian churches were founded in each colony, some with links to the Church of Scotland and others to the Free Church, including a number founded by John Dunmore Lang. Some of these bodies merged in the 1860s. In 1901 the churches linked to the Church of Scotland in each state joined together, forming the Presbyterian Church of Australia but retaining their state assemblies. In 1977, two-thirds of the Presbyterian Church of Australia, along with the Congregational Union of Australia and the Methodist Church of Australasia, combined to form the Uniting Church in Australia. The majority of the other third did not join due to disagreement with the Uniting Church's liberal views, though a portion remained due to cultural attachment. For example, although the Presbyterian Church of Australia reinstated the ban on the ordination of women to the ministry in 1991, one of the two women ordained prior to that date has kept her position in the denomination and is currently the senior minister of St Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Canberra. New Zealand. In New Zealand, Presbyterian is the dominant denomination in Otago and Southland due largely to the rich Scottish and to a lesser extent Ulster Scots heritage in the region. The area around Christchurch, Canterbury, is dominated philosophically by the Anglican denomination. Originally there were two branches of Presbyterianism in New Zealand, the Northern Presbyterian Church which existed in the North Island and the parts of the South Island north of the Waitaki River, and the Synod of Otago and Southland, founded by Free Church settlers in southern South Island. The two churches merged in 1901, forming what is now the Presbyterian Church of Aotearoa, New Zealand. Vanuatu. The Presbyterian Church in Vanuatu is the largest denomination in the country, with approximately one-third of the population of Vanuatu members of the church. The PCV was taken to Vanuatu by missionaries from Scotland. The PCV is headed by a moderator with offices in Port Vila. The PCV is particularly strong in the provinces of Taifi, Shefa, and Malampa. The province of Sanma is mainly Presbyterian with a strong Roman Catholic minority in the francophone areas of the province. There are some Presbyterian people, but no organized Presbyterian churches in Panama and Tauba, both of which are traditionally Anglican. Vanuatu is the only country in the South Pacific with a significant Presbyterian heritage and membership. The PCV is a founding member of the Vanuatu Christian Council. The PCV runs many primary schools and Onjua Secondary School. Although the church has lost members to American fundamentalists, the church is still strong, especially in the rural villages. See also: Fundamentalist Modernist Controversy, Ghost Ranch, Protestant Reformation, Puritans Pit, Confessions of Faith, Religion in Scotland, Scotch-Irish American, Churches, List of Presbyterian Churches, List of Presbyterian denominations, St Giles Cathedral, Edinburgh, famous among Presbyterians worldwide for John Knox's success in preaching there, colleges and seminaries, Presbyterian universities and colleges, people. Notes. References: Stuart J. Brown. The National Churches of England, Ireland, and Scotland, 1801-46, William the Baptist by James M. Chaney, J. E. Adams. The Meaning and Mode of Baptism, Thomas Shepard. The Church Membership of Children, and Their Right to Baptism, William Henry Foote. Sketches of North Carolina, Historical and Biographical. 1846, Full-text History of Early North Carolina and its Presbyterian Churches, Andrew Lang. John Knox and the Reformation, William Klemper, ed. The Burning Bush and a Few Acres of Snow, The Presbyterian Contribution to Canadian Life and Culture, Marston, George M. The Evangelical Mind and the New School Presbyterian Experience, Mark A. Knoll. Princeton and the Republic, 1768-1822, Frank Joseph Smith, The History of the Presbyterian Church in America, Reformation Education Foundation, Manassas, Virginia, 1985, William Warren Sweet, Religion on the American Frontier, 1783–1840, Volume 2, The Presbyterians, Primary Sources, Ernest Trice Thompson. Presbyterians in the South, Vol. 1, to 1860. Vol. 2, 1861–1890. Vol. 3, 1890–1972. Leonard J. Trinterud, The Forming of an American Tradition, A Re-Examination of Colonial Presbyterianism, Encyclopedia of the Presbyterian Church in the United States of America, St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Lahore, Pakistan. Church website, Presbyterian 101 Euro Mission and Ministry Euro GAMC. pcusa.org. Retrieved August 7, 2011. History and Architecture. East Liberty Presbyterian Church, Pittsburgh, PA. The Cathedral of Hope. cathedralofhope.org. Retrieved August 7, 2011. Further reading, Davis, A. Mervyn. Presbyterian Heritage, Lingle, Walter L. Kuykendall, John W. Presbyterians, Their History and Beliefs. Atlanta, Westminster. John Knox Presser, Smalley, James H. A Brief History of the Presbyterians. Louisville, Kentucky, Geneva Presser. External links, Presbyterian Heritage and History Center, Presbyterian and Reformed Publishing.